Good Bad.
Hello everyone and welcome to Good Bad, where we talk about the good and the not so good in the wacky world of professional wrestling. I'm MrWarrenHayes and thank you very much for being here and joining me on this episode. It is Money in the Bank season that is upon us right now at the time that we're recording. Who doesn't like a good Money in the Bank match? I sure do. And a good Money in the Bank match is good. One that's not so great, well, it's not so great. So this is what we're going to be talking about today, as original as that sounds like. We're going to be talking about 5 good Money in the Bank matches and 5 bad Money in the Bank matches. Not necessarily from worst to best. Let's just talk about them. And if you don't mind, why don't you go ahead and hit the like button on this video. Subscribe if you're not already a member. We'll be getting more of these videos on top of my live stream, so yeah, it's a good deal. All right, let's start with one that is pretty much universally considered a bad one. The Money in the Bank 2012 match for the Raw brand specifically, basically the WWE Championship. In this match, you had Kane, Chris Jericho, The Miz, Big Show, and John Cena, who were all involved. Of course, Big Show was in control early on until John Cena gives him an AA on the commentary table. And you often see this spot in highlight reels, where there's guys throwing ladders onto Big Show. It's from this match here. They're just piling the ladders on top of Big Show to make sure that he stays covered. These aluminum ladders, that are quite light in construction, in composition. That's what they're for. Pretty sure Big Show isn't being crushed. But it's a good way to get Show out of the match for a while, and there's some stuff that happens. Chris Jericho goes for the walls. Cena does the 5-knuckle shuffle on both Miz and Jericho while they're sprawled on ladders. And then he attitude adjusts Kane onto Miz, which is pretty cool. Eventually, Big Show does rise from under the pile of ladders and destroys everyone. And then he goes under the ring to get a big-ass ladder. Like the only ladder that Big Show can climb on. Because of course Big Show's not going to be able to climb up a regular aluminum ladder. Big Show WMDs Kane. He tosses Cena off the ladder. Jericho uses chairs eventually to get Big Show down. And then Jericho tries to knock Cena out on the ladder by using a sleeper hold, which eventually he does. As Cena just casually goes down the rungs. There's a fun spot at some point where Miz and Jericho are fighting on the ladder and Jericho sort of dangling off the cable, which holds the briefcase. Match comes to an end when you have Big Show and John Cena at the top of the ladder, and Cena is using the briefcase while it's still attached on the cable to sort of knock Big Show off by pelting him on the head with it repeatedly, but it's not quite connecting and it's not quite as effective. Cena's barely hitting Show's skull with it, and eventually, the cable just snaps and John Cena is left with the briefcase, and then he just knocks Big Show off. I think the main problem with this Money in the Bank match is that there were no high risk takers in this match. And this is kind of what you expect out of a Money in the Bank match, right? There's the threat wrestler, the one bigger guy who everyone's going to want to take out, like Big Show. And there was Kane here. There was 2 of them actually in this match. The other 3 guys, well, they didn't really work well together. There was no chemistry. Was the ending predictable? John Cena wins, LOL. Sure. The whole idea behind Money in the Bank was to add someone new to the World Championship mix. John Cena getting Money in the Bank doesn't seem like it was necessary. Anyway, definitely not a good one. So let's talk about a good one then. Money in the Bank 2014. These are the people that were involved in the match. Skunk Hair Seth Rollins, Rob Van Dam, Jack Swagger, I almost said Jake Hager, I did. Dolph Ziggler, who came out to a really big pop and actually pointing to his ear and telling the audience, they hear you back there, they hear you. Kofi Kingston, of course, was in this as well, and Dean Ambrose. And this was in the midst of the Seth Rollins-Dean Ambrose feud. But despite this story, everyone had their moments in a really fun match. Kofi takes a big bump early on by being pushed off the tall ladder. He springboards off the top rope onto the boys who were on the floor on the outside. That was a lot of fun early on in the match. And then there was this fun slugfest with Dolph on the ladder. Swagger power bombs Rob Van Dam off the tallest ladder. That was pretty cool too. And then Dean Ambrose superplexes Seth off of that same ladder. This leads into an angle that they were running that Ambrose was having some issues with his shoulder that had been recently injured. So the medical team came in to check on him when he was clearly overselling the injury, and they escorted him off, had him leave the premises. He'd be back though. At some point, Kofi sets up a ladder off the ropes and one of the rungs of the middle ladder. Then he goes up to fight it, and he sunset flips Rollins off the ladder onto that sideways ladder. That was a pretty cool spot. And as he's climbing up, the crowd is going nuts. You'd swear we were in the midst of Kofi Mania. Not gonna lie. The audience comes alive for Dolph's comeback and also get really behind him when he's trying to climb up the ladder while Swagger has him in the Patriot lock, the ankle lock. It was nice to see or to hear Dolph getting such great reactions from the audience. Kind of takes you back. And everything was going well in this, but the ending, Kane comes out. He gets the pyro, the whole thing, and he saunters down to the ring to keep Dean Ambrose from winning the Money in the Bank match. Kane has been working with the Authority, so that allows Seth Rollins to climb up the ladder and get the briefcase and get the win. It was such a deflating conclusion. Don't get me wrong, like the match in and about itself was strong. It's good. It had a really good pace, some great work by everyone involved, lots of great drama, good storytelling, and you're doing it with wrestlers that are over. So of course the audience is a lot keener on getting behind what's going on. But that ending just sucked the heat out of the room. And I think there's a difference between, doing an ending to get heat while doing an ending that'll just, not reward the audience for being involved in this match when a complete outside factor comes in to ruin the ending for a babyface. Sometimes it can work, I guess. In this circumstance, it really did. But still a really good match up until that point. Let's move on to a bad match this time. WrestleMania 26. There were 10 people involved in this match. 10! That's too many! Let's run them down. Kofi Kingston, MVP, Evan Bourne, of course, Matt Sydal, Jack Swagger, Shelton Benjamin, Matt Hardy, Dolph Ziggler, Drew McIntyre. We'll round it off with Kane and Christian as well. I mean, there was a big scramble on the ladder to begin with, which I thought was really fun, but then we get to the constant in this match and in a lot of Money in the Bank matches, right? Don't get me wrong, this wasn't a problem just here, but you'll have two people in the ring while the rest of the participants are all out on the floor and they've been knocked out or they're winded, and this happens so early in the matches sometimes that it doesn't help suspend your disbelief. You're like, how can you already be winded and knocked out when the match just started? The problem with this match here for doing that kind of stuff is that there's 10 people involved. 10! Are you trying to tell me that there are 8 other guys while 2 guys are in the ring fighting? The 8 other guys are all equally out and been taken out. And that's annoying. And there's some cool stuff here that happens, right? Like at some point, Evan Bourne and Christian are fighting on the ladders and Christian falls. Bourne then hits a shooting star press off the ladder onto Christian, which was badass. He gets back up there and Matt Hardy then hip tosses him off the ladder. Great stuff. There's a fun spot where Kane just splits a ladder apart, right? And he takes it off of its hinges so that there's 2 parts of it. And Kofi eventually gets his hands on them and he uses those 2 as stilts. A little corny, but also creative and a lot of fun. There's another fun spot where Christian is balancing from one ladder as it tips over to another ladder as Matt Hardy tries to grab the briefcase. That was a lot of fun. But anyway, it all comes to an end with Jack Swagger winning the briefcase. So, whatever. The main problem with this match, if you ask me, and if you're here, I think you are, is that there were too many people involved in the match for anyone to really get invested in certain people. Like, it was hard to get attached to anyone, to root for anyone, because there were 10 people in this match. Like, literally the best hope spots came from Evan Bourne. He was essentially the underdog I think everyone wanted to see win here. It was overstacked, complex, not well structured, not a good one. Let's talk about a good one now. Money in the Bank 2013, the World Heavyweight Championship contract. In this match, Fandango, Dean Ambrose, Jack Swagger and Cesaro, who were billed as the Real Americans, I don't know if you remember that, I'm telling you, not knowing what to do with Cesaro is not a contemporary thing, folks. We got Damian Sandow, Mustache, Cody Rhodes, and Wade Barrett. Here's an odd one. Nothing but heels in this match. Maybe outside of Dean, who was a kind of a cool heel, you know, kind of had that vibe going for him that he was a heel, but people would still cheer for him. But other than that, like, you look at this match here and it's like, there's no one to cheer for. This match shouldn't work. And yet it kind of worked. Get some great stuff. Cesaro gut-wrenching Cody onto a ladder. Ambrose cleans house, and you can tell at this point that the audience is really into him. Fandango hits a leg drop on Barrett, who's on a ladder. Then Sandow suplexes Dango onto that ladder. That's pretty good. They're going really hard. Early on, great visual spot where Cesaro is doing a hanging sleeper, just dangling from the ladder. Mustache Cody does a muscle buster onto a ladder. The most creative spot of the evening is definitely the one where Dean Ambrose has a ladder on his shoulders, right? And his head is popping up between two rungs, and he's windmilling guys who are trying to get at him. Eventually, Swagger and Cesaro grab each end of the ladder and they lift it, but Ambrose hangs on. He gets lifted off the ground and he flips himself on the top of the ladder, which was pretty cool, you know, and he's like, I'm gonna try and grab the briefcase, but he's way too low, so the heels just dump him over the top rope. There's another fun moment where Cesaro is on Swagger's shoulders, right? And there's no ladders in the ring, so Cesaro gets on Swagger's shoulders. Remember, they're a team, and Swagger starts walking towards the center of the ring so Cesaro can get the briefcase, and then Mustache Cody comes in and drop kicks Swagger, so everything sort of falls apart. That was a lot of fun. Mustache Cody starts throwing crossroads everywhere. He's busted open. Wouldn't be a Cody match if he wasn't bleeding. Am I right, fellas? Then eventually the Shield run in and get rid of everyone so that Ambrose can climb the ladder and win, right? But then the Usos, in their colorful getup, run in and run interference on the interference. And everyone goes out, starts brawling on the ground. Dean Ambrose climbs the ladder. And Mustache Cody comes in to push Dean off the ladder so that Dean falls onto everyone brawling on the outside in the melee. And this all comes to an end when Damian Sandow, who is Cody's partner, grabs Cody off the ladder as he's climbing up, tosses him off so that Sandow can run up and take the briefcase for himself. This was well executed and fun with some good action and, most importantly, good pacing throughout. You put a bunch of younger, eager guys together in this type of match, and that's what makes it fun. This was what Money in the Bank was about. And, you know, giving some opportunities for younger stars to break out. It was a big breakout moment for Rhodes, and Sandow won the briefcase, which is great. But he would enter the very exclusive pantheon of people whose cash-ins were unsuccessful. I think it was in October. Later that fall, he tried to cash in on John Cena and it didn't quite work out. And Sandow's career never really, at least in WWE, never really rose to any other heights after that. But still a fun match that technically, as I said, shouldn't have worked with all the heels involved, but turned out to be a really good time. Next we have, this is a bad one and it kind of breaks my heart. It's the Women's Money in the Bank 2017. The first ever Money in the Bank 2017. We had Charlotte, Becky Lynch, Carmella, accompanied by James Ellsworth. This, of course, is very important to the story. Natalya is there as well. And Tamina, rounding it out, Tamina being the force of nature in this match. Like I said, it was the first ever one. WWE was in a first ever type of mood back then, but just because it's your first ever doesn't necessarily mean it's great or good. No, this one's bad. It's a slow match, and most of the crowd watching this are clapping along like a polite Japanese audience. One thing that I do note is that in 2017, people were ready for Becky. They were ready for Becky. And people are going to be like, duh, but when you go back and you really watch this stuff, people were chanting her name. They were excited when she climbed the ladder. They were absolutely rooting for Becky Lynch. I guess the big spot of this match is Charlotte hitting a corkscrew moonsault or a rotating moonsault to the floor, a twisted bliss, essentially, and it knocks her out for the match. But of course, the story, the thing that makes this one particularly egregious is James Ellsworth gets involved in the match and pushes Becky off the ladder as she's climbing, to a huge reaction from the crowd. Carmella is in the ring, but she's been knocked loopy. Ellsworth goes to her and tries to bring her back to consciousness so she'll climb, but then he's like, oh, she's really out. Maybe I should climb the ladder. And that's what he does, and grabs the briefcase and tosses it back down to Carmella, who is declared the winner. You're starting down your first women's Money in the Bank ladder match, and a dude needs to get involved for one of your women to win. It's so bad. And I don't know how anyone thought that this was a good idea. Of course, I can hear the people backstage saying, oh, it's going to be such good heat, pal. But it's not. Not when you're trying to, in the context, trying to promote your women's division as something better than it ever was. Real competitors, real athletes, real wrestlers, and it's not a good look. And I think the funniest thing here was when Ellsworth popped in and started to climb the ladder, the audience were popping. Like, I was like, I didn't remember the audience reaction to be so positive, but people were like, yeah, and they were going crazy. It was like, woo, they were on their feet. And then when it happened, when he unclips it and drops it to Carmella, everyone goes into this dead silence. Like, there's nothing anymore. Stunned, as if the audience is like, oh, well, we thought it was funny, but we really didn't want it to happen. Because the audience is like completely dead. But overall, the match lacked the speed, the breakneck aspect of Money in the Bank. I don't think this was the strong suit for a lot of women involved. It didn't feel well put together. It was not a good match. The 2017 Women's Money in the Bank ladder match was not good. However, let's go 1 year later to the Women's Money in the Bank match in 2018, and that was a very good one. And you can tell they decided to mix it up quite a bit just by the roster of women who were involved here. Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, Ember Moon, Lana, Natalya, Naomi, and Alexa Bliss. And already in the opening minutes of this match, it's already better than the previous year. They're all fighting on the floor. Becky is kicking ladders and eats a cannonball senton by Ember Moon. Ember Moon is in control early on in this match. She hits a great springboard crossbody onto Sasha onto a ladder, and it looks so nasty. And Ember Moon was great in this match. She had recently been called up, clearly had a lot to prove, and she was the MVP of this match. Absolutely. She was a perfect fit. And there's just some great stuff. Natalya does, her step over spot onto Naomi, who's doing the splits on a ladder. So she bends forward even more. That was gnarly. Naomi hits a blockbuster off the apron on Sasha. So that was also really cool. Charlotte and Becky having stare downs in the ring gets huge pops from the crowd. And it was simmering, right? It was bubbling at this point. The big SummerSlam heel turn was going to happen just a couple of months after this. We were on the cusp of it. The heel turn attempt, the punch on the nose, we were all on the cusp of the man becoming the man here. It was amazing. We've got Alexa Bliss hitting a code red. Becky and Charlotte fight at the top of the ladder. The audience is on their feet for this. Alexa tosses Becky off the ladder. She wins the Money in the Bank match. This was a highly entertaining match that avoided all the mistakes of 2017. Sure, it was a spot fest. That's part of what Money in the Bank is about. But the women delivered on it. And honestly, what else can it be with a multi-person match like this? I think the only real question is why Lana was really involved in this. She did a few things. I think she was just benefiting from some good reactions thanks to the Rusev Day stuff at the time. But everyone here really brought something to the table, brought something interesting. It's a good one. It's a good one. Let's move on to a bad one. Money in the Bank 2010, the Raw Money in the Bank ladder match. Randy Orton, The Miz, Mark Henry, Ted DiBiase Jr., John Morrison, Chris Jericho, Evan Bourne, and Edge were your competitors. This one was slow-paced. Evan Bourne had signs of brilliance in this match, but they were so few and far between. Like when he uses the ladder at some point to swing kick onto Mark Henry. That was pretty cool. And speaking of Mark Henry, he was your beast, the one to overcome. Bless Mark Henry, but he just wasn't great as a worker. He never really was. It's not a question. And he hadn't hit his stride with his Hall of Pain act, which would happen a couple of months later. Yeah, there's this moment where everyone is out and Maryse is like, wait a second, I could probably go climb up the ladder and win for Ted, because she was hanging around Ted DiBiase Jr. at that point. So she climbs up the ladder, but John Morrison carries her off, and okay. No surprise, though, John Morrison has the fun spot of the evening where he climbs up a ladder on the outside of the ring to the top turnbuckle onto another ladder, which is angled against the corner, and he just leans that ladder onto the middle ladder to go fight off Edge, who's there. And then DiBiase sets up, he does this structure with ladders. He takes the time to set stuff up, and an upside down ladder. He turns the ladder upside down so it looks like a V instead of an A. And you're kind of like, why is he doing this? Like, he doesn't use it. I was like, why did you do it in the first place? Another great spot is when Randy Orton RKO's Morrison, and as Randy lands on his back, Evan Bourne hits airborne right on top of Randy, and the timing on it is spectacularly good. Probably the cleanest spot of the night. But it all comes to an end when Randy Orton shoves Edge off the ladder, who falls onto the upside ladder thing. So I guess Edge is dead because the ladder's upside down. But then Miz runs in, shoves Randy off the ladder, grabs the briefcase, and Miz is your winner. Lack of energy was the problem in this match. Nothing to sink your teeth into as a viewer. The crowd got alive when you saw the creative spots. Evan Bourne got a lot of hope spots within this match again. But, when there was a lot of brawling on the outside, and it was just, everything was so low energy, low effort. It's definitely one you can gloss over, and you haven't missed much. Now, for a good one, though, let's go to Money in the Bank 2011, the SmackDown Money in the Bank match. Sin Cara, Wade Barrett, Justin Gabriel, Sheamus, Cody Rhodes, Heath Slater, Daniel Bryan, and Kane. This was the opener for the pay-per-view. And what a great way to open this pay-per-view. Fast-paced match that really didn't let go. Daniel Bryan missile drop kicks Gabriel off the ladder early on in the match. He goes for a suicide dive then, and Gabriel hits a tope con hilo, and Heath Slater with a corkscrew plancha, and then it all ends with Sin Cara doing a beautiful swan dive onto Sheamus onto the floor. So lots of great stuff to kick this one off. And quickly, you sort of realize one of the reasons these Money in the Bank matches work is when you get younger, athletic guys. They all have something to prove. They all want a moment to shine. This is basically the essence of what a Money in the Bank match is. Elevating new guys or gals later on into prominence or a title picture. Sheamus powerbombs Sin Cara through a table on the floor. And Sin Cara, then, his arm starts getting jittery. So he's injured, like he's properly injured. He does the stretcher job. They take him out, and he's gone for the entirety of the match. We get a temporary alliance between former Nexus guys, Cody Crossroads, both Heath and Wade. There's a fun spot from the heavyweights as Sheamus and Kane do an impromptu doomsday device on Daniel Bryan as Kane flies off the top rope with the clothesline. That was pretty neat. The final third to this match is great. Gabriel does a 450 splash off a ladder that's set across the top rope, so it's already really shaky. He does it onto Kane, who is like between the ladder, the corner ladder setup, and the actual middle ladder, so there's not a lot of room for error, not a lot of margin for error. Gabriel just pulls it off. It's fantastic. Daniel Bryan fights off Wade Barrett to get to the briefcase and win. So on top of it being a fun match, young guys, dynamic, energetic, my God, the right guy wins. On top of it all. And literally, right? These are the seeds right here being planted of the yes movement. This was the moment where you can argue that Daniel Bryan became undeniable in the eyes of wrestling fans, as opposed to what management thought. But this was it right here. Fun match. Like I said, great way to kick off the pay-per-view. And for a pay-per-view, Money in the Bank 2011, which is usually considered a very, very good WWE pay-per-view overall. So, Yeah, you can't go wrong with this one. But you can go wrong with Money in the Bank 2015, though. Randy Orton, Neville, Corporate Kane, Dolph Ziggler, Kofi Kingston, Sheamus, and Roman Reigns. And sometimes you feel like, sometimes you feel WWE, especially when they do these stipulation-specific pay-per-views, you feel like, oh, well, we have to do it. We just have to get it done. We just have to do it, right? This feels like one of those. Like there's nothing wrong with this match in and about itself. It's a solid group of guys. They even added Neville in there, the hungry new upstart, right? But this is a Money in the Bank ladder match that just felt like everyone was going through the motions, trying to hit some big spots, but nothing really out of the ordinary. It didn't feel inspired. How about that? There were some good moments, of course. Kofi Kingston gets powerbombed by Roman onto ladders, and then he powerbombs Neville onto Kofi, who is still on the ladder. That was pretty cool. Randy hits a great RKO on Neville. He just yanks him off the ladder right into the RKO. That was really cool as well. Dolph zigzags Sheamus off the tall ladder. Neville hits a red arrow, a black arrow now, but a red arrow. And the crowd erupts in NXT chants. Roman hits his tope con hilo. And then towards the end, he yeets Kofi onto all the dudes who are on the outside. So, Roman yeeting people is, it's been a thing for a while. He gets rid of Randy off the ladder and starts climbing up to boos, mind you. Then the lights go out. Bray Wyatt appears then in the ring next to the ladder to cheers, mind you. And Bray pushes the ladder so that Roman tumbles off, which then allows Sheamus to get the briefcase. So here's the thing. Bray was in a feud with Ryback. So I'm like, what's his deal here? And ultimately that's what we look back on. And in the vacuum, you're like, why did Bray push him off? Even commentary doesn't have a good answer. Oh, what is Bray Wyatt doing here? Why did he do this? Of course, they would move into a feud, they being the Shield and the Wyatt family, but it's just so weird when you're looking at this, in a vacuum standalone. And the weird booking and I guess the word I'd say is complacent nature of how everything was constructed and set up, it felt like a Money in the Bank match that belonged on Raw. Last but not least, let's finish it off with a good one that I particularly enjoy and I'm affectionate to. Money in the Bank 2016. It's widely regarded as one of the best. I know, no big shock here. Chris Jericho, Cesaro, Sami Zayn, Alberto Del Rio, Kevin Owens, and Dean Ambrose make up this really fun, really exciting Money in the Bank. It had great wrestlers ready to do great things. Plus, it had been led into that fantastic promo with all 6 guys on the ladders, trading jabs at each other. Really, really funny, creative stuff. This is where we learned that Chris Jericho did indeed win a Money in the Bank match in Appleton. It was such a good little moment in the build up to their match. Yeah, and WWE tried to recapture that moment by doing the promos on the ladders a few times after that, but you need those guys. As for the match itself, Sami did a lot of the heavy lifting, and there was the Sami Kevin Owens feud that was bubbling here. Their hostilities were very, very present, so that added a fun layer to it as well. Cesaro does running European uppercuts repeatedly on 3 guys on 3 different corners. Great cardio workout for our boy here. Then Kevin Owens starts doing cannonballs onto the same guys. And then this all comes to an end when Sami does an exploder suplex on Chris Jericho, who was one of the guys in the corner, and then finishes it all off with some haluva kicks. Fun, fun. Del Rio does a cross arm breaker dangling off the ladder, which was a great visual. Kevin Owens super kicks him off. Kevin Owens frog splashes Dean on a ladder. And I think spot of the match, Sami Zayn Michinoku drivers KO on the edge of a ladder. It's not upright. It's not flat on it, on the legs, standing upward. That was nasty as hell. Kevin Owens looked dead when he took the spot. Then there's this great visual of all 6 guys fighting on the ladder structure that they constructed in the ring, and it's a fantastic visual. Crowd goes nuts, but it's Dean Ambrose who pulls it off here and is your winner. This is as great as Money in the Bank gets. Great workers, great pacing, built-in feuds, great spots. Everything made sense. Everything worked. Just a great edition of Money in the Bank 2016. If you've only got one you want to watch in the build up to Money in the Bank this year, I definitely suggest this one. And on that note, we are going to wrap up this edition of Good Bad. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. But before you go, I want to know, did I forget any Money in the Bank matches here? Either good or bad ones here? What's your favorite? What's your least favorite? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like, subscribe, and all that junk, but it really does help the channel quite a bit. Thank you everyone for joining me today. We'll see you next time.